So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the GPSMAP 65, which is the latest generation Garmin handheld GPS map, the 65 and the 65s. And there's also another model that's similar that was released at the same time called, I believe, the 66SR. They're all unique in that they have a new multi-GNSS positioning system, and I'll go into what that is. Now, in addition to this video, I have a corresponding guide that goes into a little bit more detail. And if you're watching on YouTube, there's a link to that right underneath the video. And if you are watching on YouTube, two ways you can help me out pretty easy. One is just to click that little thumbs up button if you've liked the video, if you find it helpful. Two, I have a link to this on REI and Amazon. If you are going to buy it and you want to say thank you for the video, just use one of those links. I get a little commission that helps me buy these things and test them, and you don't pay anything. And another note before I begin is this is not a paid promotion from Garmin. I was not given this for free or at a discount or anything like that. I paid for this out of my own pocket, and I've been using it for 5 or 6 weeks at this point. I wanted to get a good idea of how it works, the ups and downs of it before I start talking about it. So in this video, it's going to, reflect my experience with it, and that's about it. But I do have a good idea of whether this works or not, and obviously if you know my channel, you know that I talk about a lot of different GPS units, and I'm going to compare this to some other ones as well. So let's dive in. Okay, so the GPSMAP 65 and the 65S and 66SR, I have the differences between those on the website. What they all have in common is this multi-GNSS system. GNSS is Global Navigation Satellite System, so GPS is the US version of a GNSS. There's also GLONASS, there's Galileo, and there's also one from India and one from Japan. On this device, you don't have a kind of a toggle where you can just say GPS and GLONASS, GPS and Galileo, or whatever it might be like you do on other Garmin devices. It's either multi-GNSS or it's just GPS or demo mode. So it's everything or just GPS. So just a heads up, not a big deal. And all my tests, I've been using the multi-GNSS because I'm excited to see how more precise that actually is. But that's what this offers in terms of multi-GNSS systems. Now it also offers multi-band receiving. Now within, the way to look at this, within each GNSS system, so within GPS, within Galileo, within GLONASS, there's multiple bands. There's a public band that's open for hikers, hunters, whoever it might be. There's a civil band that's open for civil, like aviation, different things that aren't military, aren't public, that need a little bit more precision. And then there's military signals, which are generally encrypted and much more precise. Now, the US government on GPS tells you can get roughly 25 feet of precision with the public GPS band. Now, a few years ago, the U.S. opened up its civil band, the L5 band, to the public, and Galileo and GLONASS have also done the same thing. So this is the first receiver where you can actually receive the public and the civil bands on here. And what that means in practical terms is that you have more of those beams to pick up on, and within those beams, if I'm getting a beam, let's say from satellite A on the L1 band and the L5 band, if one of those signals is distorted, maybe there's some kind of atmospheric distortion or it's bounced off a canyon wall, this unit can figure out that by looking at the other L5 signal or civil signal. So long and short of it is, the more signals that you have and the more types of signals you have, the more information that a handheld's GPS unit has to position you. So this has many more options in terms of positioning you, in terms of receiving signals. So in theory, it should be more precise. So in practical usage, what that equates to is that I get about 6 feet of precision with this. So the receiver is taking all these signals and positioning me within 6 feet on Earth. That's good. On my GPSMAP 66i and the Montana 750i, which are different units that don't have this technology, I typically will get around 8 feet of precision at its best. It obviously will get worse at times. So you have like a 25% gain in precision, which sounds great, but the reality is if you're hiking or if you're outdoors knowing whether I'm within a 6 feet bubble or an 8 feet bubble doesn't really offer me a lot of value. Where this really comes in handy is when you're in canyons or when you have these bouncing signals or this drift where this unit can kind of figure out what's the signal that's wrong. I see like 7 good signals and 1 is kind of wacky, so I'm going to drop that out so it doesn't influence this calculation. But after taking it through a lot of different canyons, a lot of mountains, I wasn't like in the Grand Canyon, I wasn't in Zion, I wasn't in the canyons that I really would have loved to test this in, because it's COVID and it's tough for travel and all that fun stuff now. But in general, it performed almost the same as the other GPS units. So if you hike a lot in a place like the Grand Canyon or Zion, this might be a good option or a better option for you. But otherwise, in practical terms, it doesn't offer much more than another Garmin handheld. And even if I use my iPhone with Gaia GPS, I get 16 feet of precision. In practical terms, for me being on a trail and knowing, well, what's my position on the map? Do I go right or left at this junction? These things don't matter that precision. So you probably don't need this level of precision. But if you are looking for, the most precise consumer GPS, this is probably your best bet at this point. When I say consumer, there are professional GPS units that are used for surveying. They're very expensive, they're thousands of dollars, and they can allegedly pinpoint you down to a centimeter. I don't have experience with them, I've just read about them. But for those of us who just want something to get us through the wilderness, this is probably the most precise option you have, but maybe not necessary. The other thing I want to talk about is the elevation. So I mentioned earlier that by triangulating all these signals, the GPS can figure out your position, your latitude and longitude on Earth. It can also use that to figure out your elevation on Earth. And with the old GPS units that are not multi-band, I think Garmin says the precision's within 400 feet. And generally GPS elevation is not the best, and elevation on all of these things I always use as a general guideline. I would never go to like a mountaintop, read this altitude here and say this is this high. It's just not that type of a thing. It's just a general guide to gauge how much I've climbed, where I maybe am on a topo map based on my elevation, those types of things. That being said, after testing the elevation on this versus the other units that are not multi-GNSS or multi-band, were getting me anywhere between 50 and 200 feet. This elevation would get me within 10 to 20 feet, if not more precise. So that's pretty cool. What that equates to, again, in practical terms, is that if you have a unit with a barometric altimeter, so it's altimeter on here, you can do a manual calibration where I'm standing, I know I'm at sea level, I set it to 0 and it's calibrated, or you can do what Garmin has called an auto calibration, where it takes the GPS signal, GPS elevation, probably mixes that with your barometric altitude and maybe the altitude that you are on a map, on a topo map if it's loaded, and has some kind of calculation that figures that out. I have noticed that the altitude on here on the altimeter, when I use that automatic calibration, is a little bit better on the 65. All right, so let's walk through the unit. It's, I think, the same case as the GPSMAP 64, so if you have that, this will look familiar. You have your in-out buttons here, which zoom in and out. You have your arrow buttons, which move you through the menus that are on the map. Page, and moves you through the menu items. I'll show you that in a second. Find allows you to find a point of interest. Mark a waypoint. Quit backs you out. Enter makes you go in, and menu gives you sub items. Power buttons on the side right there. Lanyard clip on the back. It's got your standard Garmin spine mount. D-ring here. Open it up. It takes AA batteries, and the micro SD card slot is right underneath there. Now you can use alkaline, lithium, or rechargeable batteries in here, and I talk about that a little bit on the website. but that's the case for you. Rubber grip. It is nice. It does fit nicely in your hand, and you can move your thumb across the unit like this to hit all the buttons. Now let's power it on. All right, so once it's powered on, and if you have a GPS unit already from Garmin, this is all going to look very familiar. You hit page, you go through your quick menu items here, and you can customize what these are. There's the map page, elevation plot, main menu, gives you everything that's not on that quick bar. And I list all of these out on the website, on the article, so if you want to dive into what these all are, you can go there. It doesn't have Connect to IQ, so you can't load third-party apps on there. You can go into setup. You can set up all of these items like normal. Once you're onto a page, like so on the map page, if you hit the menu button, you'll get a sub menu where you can go in and drill down using the up and down buttons here. You can go through, select, and do all these things. So pretty standard in that, and then quitting back out. If you want to find a destination to go to, you can do it through here. You can't type it in like you could like in a Google search. Let's go shopping while we're on this hike. Department stores. Yeah, let's go to Marshall's. And there it'll route me to Marshall's. Go. Look at that. Let's hike to Marshall's. Anyway, if you want to get out of the navigation, just hit find again and then stop navigation. If you want to go backwards in the menu, you just hit quit here. And that's how the unit works. Now, it's pretty much exactly the same as every other Garmin GPS handheld. You'll notice the old UI and the same kind of way it works here. One other thing to mention, hitting the power button on the side brings you up the screen that has your backlight, where you can change your backlight, and gives you your battery and your GPS signal and a Bluetooth connection if you have one set up right there. Okay, so let's talk about the maps that come with it. Now, the 65 and 65s come bundled, and also the 66XR come bundled with Garmin TopoActive Maps, which are their outdoors maps. You can see there's contour lines. There's a lot of trails on here. They used to be a lot worse, but they've started using OpenStreetMaps for their map base, and now there's a lot of documented trails that are on here. It's pretty good. You can see there are some trails. I'm on a trail right now. This is all making sense, and you can see the trail names are on there too, and the little amenities you can click on. So that's all very good. Now, if you hit the menu button, you can set up map, and we can select the map, and you can turn on or off the different maps that are bundled on here. I recommend turning off everything that you're not using, because it should make the screen redraws a little bit quicker. If we go to menu, there's also this quick toggle for enable imagery. Now, they're referring to Garmin bird's eye satellite imagery, which you need to pay for. It doesn't come free with this device. I definitely don't recommend paying for a subscription for that. I have a video on YouTube where I talk all about that. I'll put a link to that under the description for the video here, so check that out before you buy it. You can also enable and disable public lands. So let's go back there. Let's enable public lands. So what that does, that's a new map set that's included on a lot of Garmin's, and it will shade over anywhere that is a public land. So let's see if we can find something here. Cleveland National Forest should be around here somewhere. There it is. You see that big? Let's go over here. There, you can see it's shaded. Cleveland National Forest right over there. And if I click on it, or I put the mouse over there, it'll tell me that it's Cleveland National Forest, and I can click on it, and it tells me it's Cleveland National Forest. It's good. It's okay. I can see, and if you disable it, it just goes away. I can see this coming in handy. It's better having it than not having it, but it definitely doesn't compare to what you get on a smartphone app like Gaia GPS, where you get much more detail. I've also noticed that this doesn't have any, at least around here in Southern California, local or county park public lands. It only has state and federal. So just a heads up on that front. Overall, the maps are good. They work. If you're looking for a GPS that has the trails already on there that you just want to hike with, this is a good option. There's also about 3.7 gigs of internal memory that's free. So if you want to load other maps on here, like free OpenStreetMaps, you can certainly do that. There's enough room. You can also create custom maps and load them on here as well. If you want to do scanned topo maps and bring them on here, you can do that. And again, I have guides for those on Hiking Guy. If you go to the article on Hiking Guy, I'll link to that in the article so you can check those out if you're not familiar with that process already. All right, so let's use this to create a route and help us navigate to a route. So let's scroll down. Let's scroll down. You can see my old track over there. That looks like where I want to go. Yeah, that's where I want to go, to the bathroom. So I'm here. I have the cursor pointed there, and then I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit picnic site, and I'm going to hit go, and that's going to calculate the route. And it's telling me to head northwest on the Pacific Crest Trail. There it is. And let's go ahead and follow it. It will show us that we are going this way, and we are going the correct way on the trail. Now, as I'm going, you can see it has me on the trail here. I can also go to the active route page, and here it tells me these steps that I need to take. I have to go down the PCT, then I'm going to make a right on the Cougar Crest Trail, and then we'll arrive at the picnic site. So pretty straightforward in terms of navigation. So let's go ahead and follow it and see what happens when we get to the end. Also have a trip computer here where it gives me information about my trip here, and I can go to the compass page, and it's giving my ETA at the destination, and I can customize all of these fields to be whatever I would like them to be. All right, so here I am at a pretty cool vista point here, and I want to mark this waypoint. All I have to do is hit this mark button, and it will let me go through, customize different aspects of the waypoint, change whatever I need to change, and then I hit done. And that waypoint is saved in the device. I can navigate to it. I can see it in the waypoint manager. There it is. I can look at it on a map. So waypoints are pretty straightforward and definitely easy to do on this device with the mark button. All right, so here we are back. Let's get some sunlight over here. And you can see it says arriving at the picnic site to the right, which is over there. And that's it. If I want to stop this, all I have to do is hit find and then stop navigation. Not too intuitive, but and then it stopped. So that's how you do a route. Pretty straightforward. You can also search for different points of interests. The one I use most outside, if I use it, I don't use as much, but it is geographic points. And then I can go into land features, and you can say I have all of these here, and I can route myself to it if I want to. So that's how you do routing, and that's how you find the different POIs. All right, so let's talk about battery. Now, I mentioned before, it takes 2 AA batteries. They're in the back, your standard clamp shut D-ring maneuver here. Garmin advertises 16 hours. I was getting between 14 and 16 hours in actual use, and that was when I had battery saver on. I disabled Bluetooth, and I kind of tweaked some of the settings, turned maps off that I didn't need. So you can get that. It is doable. You can get more life out of a lithium battery. I tested with alkaline batteries, lithium battery, you can get more, and you can also put rechargeable batteries in here and charge them in the device. Now, if you do charge it in the device, it is a mini USB connector, not a micro USB. Garmin gives you a USB, but this is an older format. Not around a lot so much anymore, but you can charge them in there. Now, one of the things that I don't like about the battery, and this is just something that happens on all of these Garmin units where you have external batteries like this, there's no way for the Garmin, or they haven't figured out a way for them to show you a precise percentage of battery left. All you get is a icon with little bars on it, and the unit uses the battery voltage as an indicator of how much juice it has left. And I find that to be inaccurate a lot of times. Sometimes it would go from 2 bars to nothing. Sometimes I would get notifications that the battery was almost dead when it was relatively new. So it's a little wonky. Maybe that'll be addressed in a firmware update. I'm using this with the initial firmware that came out because I got it on day 1. But I'm hoping that they address that and it's a little bit more reliable. But not a deal breaker. In general, it'll work 14, 16 hours, a couple days of hiking. So that's a good thing. Now, a new feature on here is Bluetooth. Before we had Bluetooth on this, we could only transfer data from our personal computers or whatever to here using the USB connection, which you can still do. You can drag and drop files into this. It shows up as a drive on your computer. You can also use the free Garmin Basecamp program to transfer information back and forth, which I recommend. I think that's the best option for this. But you can also do it wirelessly via Bluetooth, via your smartphone, using the Garmin Explore app, which is available for Android and iOS. Now, the Garmin Explore app is so-so. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not nearly as good as something like Gaia GPS or CalTopo. So if you're going to use it, I would say plan in CalTopo or Gaia, bring that information into Explore and then transfer that way, or just do it with a wire. It might be easier. But if you do want to sync this with Garmin Explore, it's a bit of a convoluted process. You actually have to sync it with Garmin Connect first, which is the kind of sports fitness app, and then sync it with Garmin Explore. It's a whole thing. It's boring. It's not intuitive. And I have those steps on the article on Hiking Guy. So if you get this and you want to know how to sync it, read that before you do anything. It should be helpful in terms of getting this up and running. That is an option. Now, one of the kind of clunky things is in Garmin Explore, you can organize all of your navigation information by collection. Collection being like a folder. So I could have a collection for hikes I want to do, or hikes at this park or that park, whatever it might be. And ideally, all that information is grouped for me in those collections or folders. Now, when you come into here, you can look at collections, but when you actually import the data, like the waypoints, if you had, let's say collections for each national park, and in there you had, 10 waypoints on all of them, they're all going to show up together under your waypoint manager, which is not great. I'm guessing this will probably be addressed in a firmware update, or maybe they couldn't figure out a way to do it nicely. But in that sense, it's a little clunky. Overall, the Bluetooth is, the sync is a little clunky. I just use the USB cable to transfer things back and forth. I find that much easier. Now, this also has Bluetooth, and it can get phone notifications from Bluetooth. So if you get like a missed call or a voicemail or a very important email or stock alert or something really important, it'll pop up on the screen here. Not tremendously useful. I'm sure there's use cases where it's helpful. When I'm out hiking, it's the last thing I want to see. So what I do is I basically turn off Bluetooth when I'm not using Bluetooth, which is almost always. So that's also an option. But you have that in here if you want to use those connected features. All right, the $1 million question, should you get the GPSMAP 65s? Is it worth ditching your old GPS to get this? The answer is probably no. If you have an older 6 series and you're looking to upgrade, you want a little more precision, or it's just sort of dying on you, this is a good logical step, especially if you like the AA batteries, which a lot of folks do. This is basically the most precise GPS you can get, and as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't really matter much in the fields. If there's a situation where it really helps you to have this as opposed to, or 6 feet versus 8 feet, leave me a comment. I'd love to know about it, just so I could kind of understand most people's use cases. But for me as a hiker, 6 feet versus 8 feet doesn't really matter. If you just want the best GPS handheld out there in terms of precision, this is a good bet. If you hike in canyons a lot around Zion and Grand Canyon and you want to avoid dropouts wherever possible, or multipath errors, this is a good bet. I think for most people, I would recommend a GPSMAP 66i, which is a little bit bigger than this. It doesn't have the multiband, but it also has inReach in it. And inReach is a technology that lets you communicate via text message to emergency personnel and friends and family. And that comes in handy in the backcountry if there's something wrong where you don't have cell phone signals. So check out the 66i unless you need this precision, or unless you're looking for this form factor or this type of GPS specifically. And that's my recommendation. Now, if you are going to buy this or any other hiking product, or any other product actually, and you're going to use Amazon or REI, could you please do me a big favor and use the links on my site? I have a page called Support. It's in the main menu. I also have links underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube. You can buy anything you want, and I get a small percentage of that at no cost to you. That helps me pay for these devices, which aren't cheap, and review them. Again, I'm not sponsored or, paid by Garmin to do these. This is all out of my own pocket, just in the quest to find good tools that I can recommend to people going out hiking, so that they don't waste their money or they don't buy something that they necessarily don't need. Now, again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments on YouTube. I'm pretty good at going through there and answering them. I'll do my best to answer it. If you found this useful, if you could click that little thumbs up button, that's an easy way to say thank you to me. Again, no cost to you. Sounds like an infomercial. And yeah, GPS 65, I was very excited about it. But after using it, I realized it does have the precision, but it just doesn't matter. As Bill Murray says in the movie Meatballs,
it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I tell you, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Just doesn't matter. Anyway, guys, I'll see you out there. I'm going to get away from these bugs before I become their Thanksgiving dinner. See ya.